At my wedding, my MOM smiled and said, "We're passing the apartment his parents gave you over to your sister." My sister laughed and added, "Relax. It's just an apartment." My groom just looked at them and said nothing at first. Then his hand tightened around mine. "My name is Lydia Hart, I'm 28. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned." The music faltered as whispers rippled through the reception. My mother's tone was airy, like she was commenting on the weather, but she'd just stolen the home we were supposed to start our life in. Guests exchanged awkward glances, pretending to sip their champagne. My sister twirled a curl of her hair, glowing with satisfaction. My groom, Noah, leaned close and whispered, "Smile. Let them think they won." I held the expression, glassy and composed, even as my stomach nodded. "It's not about the apartment," I murmured. "It's the message." He nodded. "Then we'll send one back." Hours earlier, when I'd been getting ready, my mother had come into the bridal suite and said, "Try not to make this about yourself today, okay? Your sister's engagement is next month, and we don't want any tension." I'd laughed, thinking she was joking. Now I knew better. As dinner was served, I watched them, my family, clinking glasses, pretending to be the picture of support. Mom leaned toward my aunt, bragging about how Lydia will understand. She's always been generous. Generous. That word had been her leash my whole life. Noah caught my eye from across the table and mouthed, "Not tonight." He was right. Revenge is best when the audience doesn't know it's begun. I lifted my glass. "To family," I said, voice smooth. "May we all get exactly what we deserve." They smiled, thinking it was a toast. Only I knew it was a promise. The applause that followed my toast was polite, thin, and full of irony. My mother dabbed her lips with a napkin, pretending not to notice the tension crackling between us. My sister, Avery, grinned like she'd just won a prize. "You're such a sport, Lydia," she said, patting my hand. "You always take things so well." If only she knew what taking things well really meant. Noah leaned toward me, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Don't give them a scene. They'd love that." I smiled. "Don't worry. I'm done giving." After the cake cutting, Mom pulled me aside near the floral arch. "Don't sulk, dear. It's just an apartment. You'll have plenty more once Noah's career settles." I looked her straight in the eye. "You're right. I will. And I'll make sure none of them have your name on the paperwork." Her smile faltered, just for a second. "You're overreacting," she said, tone clipped. "Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe I'm finally reacting appropriately." That night, after the last guests left, Noah and I sat in the empty reception hall surrounded by melting candles and half-eaten cake. He reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. "You okay?" I exhaled slowly. "I will be. But this changes things."
How?
"I think it's time I stopped playing the role they wrote for me." He nodded, quiet understanding passing between us. We'd saved enough for a down payment, but the apartment, my wedding gift, had been symbolic. Now it was a lesson. When we got home, I took off my wedding dress, folded it carefully, and slipped it into the closet. "You're not cursed," I whispered to the fabric. "You're my armor." Noah watched from the doorway. "Whatever you're planning," he said softly, "I'm in." I smiled at him through the mirror's reflection. "Good," I said, "because they just declared war." By the next morning, the story had spread through the family chat like wildfire. "Such a misunderstanding," Mom texted. "Avery didn't take your apartment. She's just borrowing it until she gets settled."
Borrowing.
That word made me laugh out loud. Noah glanced up from his coffee.
"Let me guess," he said.
"She's the victim again?" "Always," I replied. I scrolled through message after message from relatives trying to smooth it over, each one carefully avoiding accountability. My father even chimed in with, "It's family property, anyway. Don't make this ugly." Too late. They already had. That afternoon, Noah found me at my desk, tapping through files on my laptop. "What are you doing?" "Research," I said, eyes on the screen. "The apartment is under my name. Mom might think she can reassign it, but legally, she can't transfer what she doesn't own." He smiled. "You're not just hurt, You're dangerous when you're quiet. I learned from the best, I said, pulling up the title deed. Her signature's nowhere on it. For days, I played their game, replying to texts with calm, detached civility.
Of course, Mom.
Whatever's best for Avery. Behind the scenes, I contacted a property lawyer. You're well within your rights, she confirmed after reviewing the documents. They can't touch it without your consent.
Perfect, I said.
I won't stop them from moving in. I'll just let the truth find them naturally. A week later, Avery and her fiancé posted photos online, posing in front of my apartment. Our new beginning, the caption read. I smiled, hit save, and forwarded the post to my lawyer with one line. Begin the process. If they wanted to play house, they'd better be ready to pay rent. The eviction notice arrived faster than I expected. My lawyer moved efficiently, sending official documentation to Avery's new dream home. When she called, her voice was high-pitched with panic. Lydia, what is this? Mom said it was handled. It is, I said evenly. Handled legally. You're not serious. We already moved in. You moved into my apartment. That was your first mistake. Mom called next, her voice dripping with fury. You're humiliating this family. No, I said calmly. I'm reminding it who earned what. For years, they'd treated me like the dependable one. The one who'd pay, cover, adjust. The one who'd smile while being cut down in public. But something about seeing my sister post in front of my front door like it was hers made the truth impossible to ignore. That evening, Noah came home with takeout and a grin. Your lawyer emailed me. The case is airtight. I exhaled, the tension slowly leaving my shoulders. They'll have to vacate by the end of the month. Want me there when you tell them? I shook my head.
No.
They need to hear it from me and me alone. 2 days later, I drove to the apartment. Boxes were stacked in the hallway, Avery and her fiancé arguing in circles. Mom stood near the kitchen, red-faced, trying to reason with the property manager. When I walked in, everything went still. Avery's voice cracked. You did this. I met her eyes. You told me to relax. It was just an apartment. So relax. You'll find another. Mom's lip trembled. You're being cruel. No, I said, setting the paperwork on the counter. I'm being clear. As I walked out, Avery shouted after me, You'll regret this. Maybe. But at least the keys in my hand were finally mine again. The following week, the family group chat went up in flames. Screenshots of my betrayal circulated faster than truth ever could. My aunt messaged, Families shouldn't sue family. My cousin added, Couldn't you just share?
Share.
That word again, the one that had always meant sacrifice yourself so others can stay comfortable. I muted the chat. Noah poured me coffee that morning, sliding the mug across the counter. You did the right thing, he said. I know, I replied, but it's strange. Peace feels louder than their chaos. Later that afternoon, I met my lawyer to finalize the transfer of ownership. Congratulations, she said, handing me the official papers. The title is clean. Completely yours. Finally, I whispered, tracing my name where my mother's once loomed in the background of every decision I made. That night, I went back to the apartment, not to gloat, but to breathe. The place was empty now, faint smell of furniture polish still in the air. I walked through each room, fingers grazing the walls. Every echo reminded me of the years I'd tried to earn what I'd already deserved. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Mom. You've embarrassed us beyond repair. Avery's distraught. We hope you're happy. I stared at the screen, then typed. I'm not happy. I'm free. There's a difference. The message marked read and stayed unanswered. I turned off my phone, sat on the living room floor, and looked around the quiet space that no longer owed anyone anything. Noah joined me, handing me takeout and a glass of wine. So, he said, smiling, what's next? I looked toward the window, city lights flickering like forgiveness I didn't need anymore. I think, I said softly, I'm finally home. 2 weeks later, the silence broke, not from guilt, but from desperation. My father called first. I let it ring out. Then came a text from Mom. We need to meet. It's about the family trust. Noah raised an eyebrow when I told him. Let me guess, he said. Avery's in over her head? Worse, I replied. They used the trust to fund her wedding renovations. Now the bank wants collateral. When I met them at their house, the air smelled like tension and old perfume. Mom sat perfectly straight on the sofa, hands clasped in performative grace. Lydia, dear, we all made mistakes. Families should help each other, don't you think?
Sure, I said.
Once the family stops treating help like entitlement. Dad cleared his throat. We just need you to transfer temporary ownership of the apartment to the trust. Only for a few months. I smiled. You mean the apartment you publicly gave away? The one that's now legally and solely mine? Don't be petty, Mom said sharply. We raised you better than this. I leaned forward. You raised me to confuse love with obligation. I finally unlearned it. Their faces fell in unison, shocked that I'd stopped speaking their language. I'm not your safety net, I continued. And I'm not Avery's consolation prize. Mom tried one last time. You'll regret being so cruel. Maybe, I said, standing. But I'll regret staying small a lot more. I walked out before they could reply, sunlight hitting my face like applause. Noah was waiting in the car, engine running, music low. How'd it go? He asked. I buckled my seatbelt, smiling. Let's just say, the trust finally broke. And for once, I didn't feel guilty for letting it. For weeks afterward, the silence from my family became a living thing, heavy, deliberate, almost rehearsed. They didn't call, didn't text, didn't even gossip through relatives. It was their old trick, punishment through absence. Only this time, it didn't sting. I was busier than I'd ever been. My architecture firm landed its biggest commercial project, a waterfront renovation Noah and I had dreamed about for years. At the ribbon cutting, he squeezed my hand. You built this from ashes, he whispered. Literally. I smiled. And some ashes deserve to stay buried. That night, I came home to a thick envelope waiting by the door. My parents' handwriting. Inside were two things, a letter and a check. The note read, to repay what you've spent fighting us. Let's not make this worse. No apology, no acknowledgement of the humiliation. Just hush money disguised as civility. I tore the check in half. They still think this was about the apartment, I said to Noah. He leaned against the counter. Then maybe it's time to show them it never was. 2 weeks later, I launched a new initiative through my firm, Havenworks, a fund to provide housing grants for young women rebuilding after financial or familial manipulation. My lawyer called it poetic restitution. I called it clarity. When the local paper covered the story, they quoted me saying, "Home is not a gift. It's something you earn, protect, and never owe anyone for." My mother sent one last message after the article ran, "You've changed." I typed back, "That was the point." Then I blocked the number, folded the letter into my desk drawer, and looked around my living room, the apartment they once tried to take. Everything around me was quiet, solid, and finally mine. A year later, I stood on the balcony of that same apartment, the one that started it all. The city lights glittered below, a moving constellation of lives I no longer compared to mine. The wind carried faint music from a nearby wedding, laughter spilling into the night. For a moment, it felt poetic, like the universe had staged a quiet encore just for me. Noah came out with 2 glasses of champagne. 1 year, he said softly. Feels like a lifetime. I smiled. It is. The one I was supposed to have. Inside, the apartment had transformed. Where chaos once lived, calm now did. The framed certificate for Havenworks hung above my desk, next to a newspaper clipping that read, "Architect turns betrayal into blueprint for empowerment." Mom and Dad hadn't reached out since that final text, and Avery had gone silent after moving out of state. The absence didn't ache anymore, it clarified things. Some relationships end not because of anger, but because truth finally stops bending. Later that night, I hosted a dinner for a few women from the foundation, each one rebuilding her life, each one starting again in a home with her own name on the deed. I watched them eat, laugh, breathe freely. That sound, real laughter, was my inheritance. After everyone left, I turned off the lights and stood in the kitchen where the first betrayal had unfolded. The same space, but no longer haunted. Noah wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Do you ever think about giving it back?" he teased. I chuckled softly. "Never. Not the apartment, not my peace." He kissed the top of my head.
"Good.
"You earned both." I looked out the window, city lights reflecting like promises kept. "Home," I whispered, "finally means me,